My wedding should have been the happiest time of my life, but my own family forced me to choose blood or love. I chose love, and the seating chart became my public declaration. The planning of my wedding to Mark should have been the happiest time of my life, and for the most part it was. Mark is the kindest man I've ever known, and his 16-year-old daughter, Chloe, is the absolute light of my world. I've been in her life since she was 10, and the word stepmom has never felt right. I'm not a replacement for her mother, who passed away when she was little, but I'm her mom in every way that counts. I do the school runs, I help with homework, I stay up late talking with her about boys and a future she's just starting to imagine. She is my daughter. End of story. My family, however, seemed to have a different edition of that story, the one where blood is the only ink that matters. It started with little comments, snide remarks disguised as just asking. "Will Chloe be a flower girl?" my aunt asked, knowing full well she was a teenager. "Or will she just be with her dad's side?" But the real battle began with the seating chart, the head table specifically. I was on the phone with my mother, a woman who considers tradition to be the 11th commandment. We were going over the floor plan for the reception hall. "So, for the head table," she began, her voice crisp and businesslike, "it will be you and Mark, me and your father, and your sister Sarah with her husband." I waited for her to continue. She didn't. I could hear her tapping a pen on her desk. "And Chloe, of course," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "Chloe will be sitting with us." The silence on the other end of the line was heavy. "Honey," my mom said, drawing the word out like a sticky piece of taffy, "the head table is for the bride and groom's immediate family. The parents, the siblings. It's tradition." I could feel my knuckles turning white as I gripped the phone. "Mom, Chloe is my immediate family. She's my daughter. She's Mark's daughter," she corrected instantly. "She is a lovely girl, but she's not your blood. She can sit with her father's relatives. They'll want to be with her." Every word was a perfectly aimed dart. "Not your blood." The phrase echoed in my ears, and a fierce, protective rage I didn't know I had surged through me. This wasn't about tradition. This was about exclusion. This was about them telling my little girl, a child who had already lost one mother, that she wasn't good enough to be considered family by another. "No," I said, my voice low and shaking. "She will sit at the head table, right between me and Mark, where she belongs. This is not up for discussion." My mother scoffed, a sound of pure condescension. "You are being overly emotional about this. You need to think about how this looks. People will talk. They'll think it's strange. You're putting this girl ahead of your own family." That was it. That was the line. "My family," I repeated, the words tasting like ash in my mouth, "is the one I am creating with Mark and Chloe. And if you can't accept that, then maybe you should reconsider your own place at the table." I hung up before she could respond, my heart hammering against my ribs. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my sister, Sarah. "Mom just called me, crying. You can't be serious. You're really choosing her over us?" I stared at the screen, then looked over at the wedding seating chart I had open on my laptop. An idea, cold and clear and absolutely perfect, began to form in my mind. I took a deep breath and started dragging and dropping names. Oh, they wanted to talk about who was real family? Fine. The seating chart would make my position perfectly and publicly clear. The fury that had been a hot, boiling thing in my chest cooled into something sharp and precise. I deleted the label "head table" from the digital layout. In its place, I typed "the bride and groom's table." I dragged my name and marks to the center. Then I dragged Chloe's icon right next to mine. I wasn't done. I moved my sister Sarah, the matron of honor, and her husband to table 9. In her place at our table, I put my best friend since kindergarten, Laura, my real maid of honor in all but title. Then I added Mark's best man and his wife. To complete our table, I added Mark's Aunt Carol, the woman who stepped in after his wife died and became the grandmother Chloe needed. This wasn't a table of tradition or blood. This was a table of love. This was our real family. As for my parents and sister, they were seated at table 9, right next to the swinging doors of the kitchen. Not with Mark's parents, not with other close family, but with my third cousins they barely knew. The message was clear. You want to act like distant relatives? You can sit with them. When I showed Mark the revised chart later that night, he wrapped his arms around me and held me tight. He looked from the screen to me, a slow, proud smile spreading across his face. "That's my wife," he said softly. "Protecting our girl. Protecting our family." His unconditional support was all the validation I needed. In the weeks that followed, a Cold War descended. My mother and sister stopped calling about the wedding. There were no more questions about flowers or last-minute RSVPs. They communicated only through clipped one-word texts. I knew they were waiting for me to break, to call them begging for forgiveness, to restore them to their rightful place at the head of the table. They underestimated me. They misunderstood my love for Chloe as some flight of fancy, not the deep, unshakable foundation it was. They thought their silence was a punishment. To me, it was peace. The wedding day arrived, a perfect sun-drenched afternoon. The ceremony was beautiful, a blur of happy tears and heartfelt vows. As I stood opposite Mark, with Chloe standing beside me as my maid of honor in all but name, I felt a sense of rightness that eclipsed all the preceding drama. This was my family. This was my future. Walking into the reception hall on Mark's arm, I felt a nervous flutter in my stomach. The guests were already mingling, a joyful buzz filling the room. At the entrance stood a large, ornate easel holding the beautifully calligraphed seating chart, our little battlefield. I saw a small crowd gathered around it, and then I saw my sister, Sarah, push her way to the front. I watched as her eyes scanned the list. I saw the exact moment she found her name. Her smile vanished, replaced by a look of utter disbelief, which quickly curdled into incandescent rage. Her head snapped up, her eyes locking onto mine from across the room. She started moving towards me, weaving through the guests with a predatory speed. My mother was right behind her, her face a pale, tight mask of fury. "You have 5 seconds to explain this," Sarah hissed, shoving her phone in my face. On the screen was a picture of the seating chart, her name at table 9 circled in an angry red. "Before I make a scene, you will regret for the rest of your life." I took a slow sip of my champagne, letting the bubbles dance on my tongue for a moment before I met my sister's furious gaze. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. The calm in my own expression was a stark contrast to the storm in hers, and I knew it was driving her insane. 5 seconds? I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't need 5. The explanation is simple, Sarah. You told me and Mom told me that the head table was for real family. You made it painfully clear that in your eyes, Chloe doesn't qualify. So I made a new table, a table for my family, the people who love and support me, Mark, and our daughter, Chloe. Unconditionally. My mother gasped, clutching at her chest in a performance worthy of an Oscar. "How dare you?" she breathed. "After everything we've done for you, for this wedding. You are humiliating us. You are choosing that girl over your own mother and sister." The way she said "that girl," dripping with disdain, made my blood run cold. She didn't even have the decency to use Chloe's name. Just then, Mark stepped up beside me, his hand finding the small of my back. He didn't look at me. His gaze was fixed on my mother and sister. His voice was quiet, but it had a core of steel that cut through the tension. "This is our wedding day," he said. "You are guests here. You will not speak about my daughter that way, and you will not speak to my wife that way. You can either go and take your assigned seats and behave with the dignity I thought you possessed, or you can leave." Sarah's mouth fell open. She had clearly expected me to crumble, to be terrified of her threat of a scene. She never anticipated a united front. She looked from Mark's immovable expression back to my resolute one, and her rage twisted into something uglier, something more cunning. "Leave?" she scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. "Oh, I'm not going anywhere. I'm the matron of honor. I have a speech to give, remember?" She leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper meant only for me. "You have until the speeches start." That's about an hour. You are going to walk over to that chart, and you are going to switch us with Laura and Mark's aunt. You are going to fix this embarrassment. If you don't, she said, her eyes glittering with malice, I will get up there with this microphone, and I promise you the speech I give will not be the one we rehearsed. Everyone here will know exactly what a heartless, backstabbing daughter you really are. The clock is ticking. She straightened up, a fake, brittle smile plastered on her face for the benefit of any onlookers, and turned away, dragging my mother with her towards the bar. I felt Mark's hand tighten on my back, but I barely registered it. I was watching Chloe, who had just walked into the room from the patio. She hadn't heard the words, but she could clearly see the aftermath in the thunderous expressions of my family and the rigid set of my jaw. She looked at me, her brow furrowed with worry, and mouthed, "Is everything okay?" I gave Chloe the brightest, most reassuring smile I could muster. "Everything is perfect," I mouthed back, and waved her over to our table. I wasn't going to let them poison this day for her. As we sat down at the bride and groom's table, surrounded by the warmth and laughter of our chosen family, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. Sarah's threat was ugly, a desperate last-ditch effort to reclaim control, but it was hollow. What could she say that would hurt me more than what she had already said? What public humiliation could be worse than my own family telling me my daughter wasn't real? The hour ticked by, the salads were served, the main course arrived. From across the room, I could feel Sarah's eyes on me, trying to burn a hole through my resolve. I ignored her. I laughed at a joke Mark's best man told. I helped Chloe cut her steak. I lived in the joy of my wedding, refusing to give them the power to ruin it. Finally, the clinking of a glass announced the start of the speeches. Mark's best man went first, delivering a hilarious and heartfelt tribute. Then Laura, my real maid of honor, took the mic and brought tears to my eyes with stories of our lifelong friendship. And then it was Sarah's turn. A hush fell over the room as she walked to the podium. She smoothed her dress, her knuckles white as she gripped the microphone. She looked directly at me, a final, silent ultimatum in her glare. I met her gaze, held it, and gave her a small, serene nod. "Do your worst." Her eyes widened almost imperceptibly. She had genuinely believed her threat would work. She had thought I would sacrifice my integrity and Chloe's dignity for the sake of appearances. She had no idea who I was anymore. She cleared her throat. I am Sarah, the bride's sister." She started, her voice a little shaky. She looked down at her note cards, then back up, her eyes flitting between me and the crowd. I could see the war raging within her, the urge to lash out, to hurt me, battling against the 100 pairs of eyes watching her, expecting a loving tribute. To make a scene now, would be social suicide. She would be the bitter, jealous sister who ruined a wedding. I had called her bluff, and she had folded. She took another breath and launched into the most generic, lukewarm speech I had ever heard. It was a collection of empty platitudes and cliches that could have been about any sister, any bride. She talked about us playing as kids. She wished Mark and me well. She never once mentioned Chloe. She didn't have to. Her silence on the subject was more damning than any insult. When she finished, there was polite, scattered applause. She avoided my eyes as she walked back to her seat at table 9, next to the kitchen doors. Later that evening, as I was dancing with Chloe, our arms around each other as we swayed to a slow song, she rested her head on my shoulder. "I know your mom and sister are mad," she whispered. "I'm sorry if I caused a problem." I pulled back to look her in the eyes, my heart swelling with a love so fierce it almost hurt. "You are not a problem," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "You are my daughter. You are the best part of this family. And if anyone can't see that, then they're the ones with the problem, not you." I saw my dad watching us from across the dance floor. He caught my eye, and for the first time all day, he gave me a small, sad smile and a nod. Maybe it was a nod of understanding. Maybe it was one of respect. It didn't matter. The battle was over. The seating chart hadn't just proven them wrong. It had redrawn the map of my entire world, placing love, not blood, firmly at the center. And my family had never felt more real.